The Golden Company is well known for their motto, "Our word is good as gold." When hired on to fight, they make sure they give every penny's worth on the battlefield. Their swordsmen have trained relentlessly, letting them find any weak spot in an enemy's defenses, exploiting it. Meanwhile, they almost never flee the field even when faced with seemingly insurmountable odds, making them a sound investment for anyone with coffers to afford them. Thanks for stopping by Big Top Gaming. My name's Brian, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about a unit that hasn't been released in the US just yet. I think there might be some floating around out there, out in Europe or in Asia maybe, but haven't been here yet. But that's going to be the Golden Company Swordsmen. So you wouldn't be able to tell from reading the description that that's how they act in the Game of Thrones TV series, but I definitely think that the Golden Company got sold a little short in the series there, so let's see if we can try and redeem them a little bit in this video. So the Golden Company Swordsman box comes with 6 unique sculpts. One amongst those is an attachment. So for 7 points, we get a unit that is speed 5, has a melee attack called Tactical Strike that hits on 3s, and then has a 7/5/4 decay stat. The defense save is 4+, and the morale is 6+. The Tactical Strike ability, or Tactical Strike melee attack, has the ability Sundering, and also has an ability that says while you control the missive on the tactics board, this attack rolls the highest attack die value. They also have the ability Iron Resolve. This unit gains +1 to panic test rolls and suffers -1 wound from failing panic tests. So the Golden Company Swordsmen are fairly aggressive. They hit quite accurately on 3s. They've got average-ish defensive stats, but I'd say above average when you look at the morale and Iron Resolve combined. They've got a 33% chance on failed panic test to not take any wounds if there's no panic shenanigans from your opponent. And just having base Sundering is quite useful. But also being able to just roll the highest attack die value as long as you're going after the missive is also a pretty beneficial thing for them. It means that they're likely to be extremely dangerous until the very bitter end of the game, and they're definitely going to have a better chance of making it there, having the good set of defensive stats that they've got. And overall, this unit is very interesting to talk about, in my opinion, because they... at 7 points, they're expensive, but they are very combat focused. They're kind of like a self-contained unit. They don't need anything to get better, but they definitely lend themselves to being decent commander bunkers for factions that might not have better options to take, or somebody who wants a more aggressive option. So let's take a look at the attachment that comes in the box here too. For 2 points, we get the Golden Company Officer, and he brings the ability that is an innate ability, so it can't be taken off this unit, called Boisterous Charisma. It states that this unit may never be targeted by enemy orders, tactics cards, or be influenced by enemy NCUs. He also brings the Dauntless ability that states each time this unit passes a morale test, it restores 1 wound. So if you were to combine these, or combine the Golden Company Officer with the Golden Company Swordsman, I think you've got an extremely hard to deal with unit. The Golden Company Officer itself seems to be something where, like, if you're maybe teching your list to play into a very specific matchup where you know your opponent's going to be trying to control you in some way, shape, or form, the Golden Company Officer just really shuts that down. I'm thinking about things like Melisandre being a pain in the butt, possibly Joffrey causing some issues as well. Any kind of enemy influence, NCUs or anything, I mean, it's all on the card, right? Like, if these are things you don't want happening to a specific unit, then you can pay your 2 points to get this guy, and then you'll make sure that they stick around. Of course, you know, Expert Duelist existing in the game definitely makes this a little different, but I think Lannister's really one of the only factions that, well, I guess Lannisters and Baratheons probably have the ways to be able to deal with a Golden Company officer a little bit more reliably. But regardless, I think the Golden Company Officer is an interesting tech piece that if you combine them with the Golden Company Swordsmen, taking them up to 9 points is a little rough, but you can't ignore that it's a very difficult unit to respond to, considering they fight really well up until the end of the game, and you can't really interact with them a whole lot, considering this Golden Company Officer keeps them from being messed with. I think one of the first things to talk about with the Golden Company anything is probably making or mentioning at least the Golden Company War Elephant. It does have an ability where it has to perform a morale test to do anything. If there isn't a Golden Company infantry unit within long range of it. And I think that the Golden Company Swordsman in conjunction with the War Elephant probably going to be one of the better ones to take. Or the better duo to take. The Golden Company Crossbowmen, they want to shoot at their long range and not super get in the mix. Maybe they do a little bit, but that's, we'll talk about that in a different video. But I think that the Golden Company Swordsmen are a decent pick with the War Elephant, especially if you want them traveling together so the Elephant can go in and then the Golden Company can follow up. I think it'll be another one of those 1-2 punch things, but doesn't mean that they have to play that way. It's just a way to play. I do think there are some factions that appreciate the Golden Company Swordsmen a bit more than the others, and the first one of those is going to be Lannisters. And the reason being is that the Golden Company Swordsmen are an honest combat unit. They don't have any conditions in order to make sure that they do what you want them to do, which is fight and do damage. The one conditional thing is having the missive on the tactics board to roll your highest dice, but that I don't feel like that's, extremely conditional. They still always have sundering. They're always hitting on 3s, and they have a decent attack stat. A good comparison would be something like the Warriors' Sons and Lannisters. They're also very combat focused, but with the Battle Prayer ability, their survivability or offensive capabilities are conditional. It's all dependent on having those faith tokens, which I recognize is not difficult to do in this faction because you've got different ways to do morale tests with different commanders, as well as just throwing a champion of faith in there. But again, that's pretty finite. They need to either keep being attacked and get to that morale test phase, or they have to keep having these other cards or abilities available to them to get those faith tokens. The Golden Company Swordsmen don't need that. They only need that missive to be rolling full attack dice. So I don't consider that conditional. But if we take a look at a commander like one of the new ones from the Hero Box 3 for Lannisters, Kevin Lannister, he brings the ability Lannister Supremacy, so when your opponent completes an attack against the unit, you target the attacker, they suffer 1 panic test with -1 to their roll and +1 wound on a failure for each remaining rank in this unit. He also brings Might of the Throne, that states each time a friendly NCU claims the Crown Zone, you can replace that zone's effect with Kevin Lannister's unit performs 1 attack or charge action. So just off the front of his card, having a survivable unit helps him because we have Lannister Supremacy, and every survivability, or the one survivable ability that the Golden Company Swordsmen have with Iron Resolve, it's passive. They don't need to spend an order to utilize it, so you should be getting a pretty decent amount of effectiveness from Lannister Supremacy. And then with Might of the Throne, again, non-conditional combat prowess on these guys. You're going to be taking multiple attacks with Kevin Lannister's unit. It's guaranteed unless your opponent's just shutting you down from taking either the swords or the crown. So making sure that you don't need to have this economy of faith tokens is going to be helpful for the Golden Company Swordsmen. Now, since this is going to be a bit longer, I feel, of a video, I'm going to skip over Kevin's commander cards because just know that they are very good with the swordsman, and we'll get around to talking about Kevin specifically in a later video. But let's kind of focus our attention on another commander in Lannisters. We could take a peek at Jaime Lannister, another commander that really likes having a non-conditional combat unit because his commander version, or his attachment, brings disrupt and counterattack. So your opponent will want to get into this unit and deal with them because they are dangerous. And with Jaime Lannister punishing your opponent quite heavily for attacking the unit, I think that it's going to just make this a really big death ball of not fun for your opponent to have to deal with. So those are just two examples of commanders in this faction that really want a dedicated, unapologetic combat unit, and I think that that just really helps to kind of fit them into that Lannister list. The other faction that I think that this unit finds a nice home in is going to be in the Baratheons, and I don't know if I really 100% am on board with them more on a Stannis side of things, just because the Kingsmen do exist. So if you want a unit it's the same points, roughly the same stats, a little bit different on survivability with no Iron Resolve, but with King's Blade, they're always going to be getting at least Sundering and maybe a couple other things. And then having to the last means that they've got that survivability. But where I really like these is in a Renly loyalty-based list, only because at that 7-point level, the Rose Knights are something that you would look at as almost like a comparison to the Golden Company Swordsmen, but the Rose Knights are a little bit more defensive than they are offensive. Like they kind of thread this weird needle. They've got the 3+ save, they've got a decent morale stat, and they heal a bunch. They do fling damage out as they heal, but their actual ability to push damage through, they need to be altered in order to keep making that happen. But with the Golden Company Swordsmen, especially if you're going to be using them as a commander bunker, they can make sure that commander gets up in the business and survives while also doing a lot of work. And I think one of them to look at that kind of really pushes that would be someone like Eldon Estermont, the Lord of Greenstone. He brings the order Mark Target, so at the start of a friendly turn, you can target one enemy unit within line of sight and long range, they become vulnerable. He also brings the ability Hardened, so each time an enemy is performing an attack on this unit, after rolling the defense dice, this unit blocks one hit plus one additional hit for each of its destroyed ranks. So this is, if you have him in a unit of Golden Company Swordsmen, the vulnerable token is going to work really well with your Sundering, and the Baratheons can definitely get some good use and manipulation out of the tactics or the missive position on the tactics board. So you're likely, as you go down in ranks, you're able to still fight at maximum capacity, especially with Harden. It can make sure that this unit is likely to get to the end of the game, and that means that your commander stays around too. So I think that's just one example of a commander that really appreciates being in a unit like this that does a ton of work, is quite survivable, and can be punishing for your opponent to go into. So to look at other factions and why I think they might not appreciate the Golden Company Swordsmen so much, I think I want to bring up some comparisons here. Now, cross-comparison in factions is not always the most fair, but with neutrals it's a little bit different because there's an opportunity cost with taking one of these guys, right? Because you can only have half of your list be neutral, and at the same point level, you almost can't ignore comparing things. So for the Starks, I think if you're looking at something like the Golden Company Swordsmen, you almost would be picking up the House Umber Great Axes to fulfill that role. They have the same defensive stats with +1 to their morale, so that's almost like they kind of mitigate half of Iron Resolve at least. And they have a 765 decay stat, which is a little bit better than the Golden Company, and they still have innate Sundering, and as they get lower in ranks, they actually ignore more armor. So the unit is extremely fighty, and as the game attrition's down, they get more aggressive. But they also have Unyielding, so as they're also losing those wounds, if they happen to fail a panic test, they aren't as punished for it. You know, you can get to the point where if you are 2 ranks down and living in the danger zone, there's only a 33% chance a failed panic test will actually do any wounds to you, period. So I think that's where I feel like the Starks, they might not find a whole lot of value out of the Golden Company Swordsmen. So turning our heads over to Night's Watch, I think one of the better comparisons, in my opinion, is the Sworn Brothers. Same point level, same attack stat with the 754 hitting on 3s. A little bit, kind of the same deal we had with the Great Axes, where they've got a 4+ defense and 5+ morale, so kind of mitigated a little bit with losing half of Iron Resolve. But they still have innate Sundering, and they get that martial training order that Eldon brings, so they can do a lot of work in combat. And the big reason, outside of just having a comparison that's, if you're looking for a bunker for a commander and something that fights well, outside of that, the other big reason to not really have neutrals in Night's Watch is that there's no way to make a neutral unit a Night's Watch unit, so you're not able to stack up those vows, and you're not getting value out of that unit. You really, if you're going to be picking neutrals or neutral combat units for Night's Watch, it has to be for an extremely specific reason, and the Golden Company Swordsmen existing as a bunker for a commander just isn't good enough, since the Night's Watch have better options for that, especially if we're looking at something like the veterans of the Night's Watch or something like that. Kind of tangential to the reason why you don't want to take them in Night's Watch is also kind of the reason why I wouldn't be taking them so much in a Greyjoy-based list. Mostly, pillage tokens are huge for Greyjoys, and a lot of their cards and commanders work off of Greyjoy units, and currently there's no way to turn a neutral unit into a Greyjoy unit. The Black Tide Chosen are something where if you were looking for a unit that was similar-ish to the Golden Company Swordsmen, they're not a terrible one to pick up, but at the end of it all, I think when you're looking at Greyjoys and neutrals, you probably are kind of shying more towards the cavalry side of things, since the Greyjoys don't have a real good option for that. But when it comes to the Golden Company Swordsmen, between Black Tide Chosen or something like Silenced Men, you really do have a lot of really good options for trying to either push combat or create a unit that's a little bit more survivable where your commander can exist. And finally, for Targaryens, the one that comes to mind is the Unsullied Swordmasters. For the same amount of points, we're getting better stats in general, and the Unsullied Prowess ability for getting precision, always rerolling your attack dice, and never being able to have weakened tokens spent from you. You're not getting Sundering that the Golden Company Swordsmen bring, but we do have different ways to get Sundering on this unit if we absolutely really wanted it. But in general, I think if you're looking for something that is aggressive and defensive, the Unsullied are probably where you're looking anyways. So I can't envision the Targaryens getting a whole lot of use out of the Golden Company Swordsmen. I do think it's worth mentioning, though, that even though several of the factions aren't really interested in the Golden Company Swordsmen for what they are, there could be a moderate chance that you might want a War Elephant in your list, so that's when you would probably be looking at bringing a Golden Company Swordsman unit. But I really do think that in a neutral Hero Box 3, we could get some potential Golden Company commanders, or probably more likely commander. But I think that's where we're really going to start to see the Golden Company Swordsmen really come alive, as they might not function so well as a jack of all trades goes in everybody's list type unit, and more so might have their own focus and function that can bring something that's a little bit more combat oriented for combat's sake within the neutral faction. Not like they don't have it. I mean, Daario brings some combat capabilities, but I think the Golden Company almost has this more get stuck into it type combat prowess. I think it's different combat, right? Because I think Daario is hit them glassy fast and sacrifice a lot to get some extra attritional gains, whereas the Golden Company Swordsmen, their attritional value could just be from having things like the Golden Company Swordsmen, where they last for a while. They can start rolling. They can roll at full dice when they're down towards the end of the game by taking the right zones. And I would be really interested to see what their commander ends up bringing to the list. So by no means am I trying to present the factions that don't want these to be mopey on them. I'm super excited for the existence of this unit, especially as for getting their own kind of carved out sub faction, like how the Boltons or the Stormcrows have. But I do think if you're a Baratheon or Lannister player and do want to play either more of the Renly side of things or play some of those combat-focused Lannister commanders, I think that the Golden Company Swordsmen are an amazing pick. And having that officer, again, I didn't even mention the officer for the other factions because they certainly could find ways to utilize a 2-point attachment that just says you can't control or manipulate this unit unless you deal with this attachment. So I think that overall the Golden Company Swordsmen are going to be an extremely valuable pickup for most people. But if you're like Night's Watch specific, I probably wouldn't find much value in them. And I think for Greyjoys, they probably wouldn't find much in them either. But if you are one of those faction players, like that's the sole thing you do or the one you play the most, and there is something that I might be missing with the Golden Company, feel free to leave that in the comments section below. I'm more than happy to be proven wrong on things. It's not like I'm trying to speak from a position of great understanding or power. I just kind of point out the synergies and efficiencies and let people kind of take that and do with it what they will. At any rate, thanks for watching this video, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.